Welcome to another story made by Oracle 1. The village of Ashbrook lay heavy beneath a slate-gray sky, the kind of oppressive morning that seemed to press down upon the small, cobblestone streets and the tattered wooden homes squeezed side by side. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and wood smoke, but beneath these familiar aromas lurked a heavier, more acrid odor, a mixture of sickness, despair, and burning flesh. Ashbrook was gripped by the Black Plague, and time itself appeared to retreat from the village, slipping away with every life claimed. In the heart of Ashbrook stood the little Bellmaker's workshop, a sturdy stone building with dust-flecked windows clouded from years of smelting and shaping molten metal. Here, Horace, the Bellmaker, had lived all his life, shaping bronze and copper into the resounding voices of the church bells. For 3 decades, his hands had shaped the village's heartbeat, the luminous clangor that marked every hour, every gathering, every prayer whispered into the air. But now Horace lay too weak with fever and shivers to even hold his hammer. His son, Thomas, 18 and wiry from lifelong work, stirred the fire, his hands trembling as he added more charcoal to the forge. The workshop was unusually quiet, save for the distant coughs echoing from the street. Even the steady clang of the Bellmaker's hammer had stopped. Thomas's eyes were sunken, his cheeks hollow beneath strands of unwashed hair. From the shadows of the corner, a large block of polished wood waited silently, half carved by Thomas's hands, awaiting the final touches to become the memorial gift to the village. For weeks, the plague had wreaked havoc upon Ashbrook. Families abandoned one another, neighbors locked themselves indoors, refusing to risk exposure. The bell tower that Horace's father once built had fallen silent, its great iron bell untouched, as no one wished to gather and hear the sound that once symbolized hope and community. Yet, the bells also marked death, tolling mournfully to announce those who had passed. Thomas thought of the bell tower each day. How the poor souls of Ashbrook would soon be forgotten in the silence if no memorial was raised. A memorial, not only to those lost but to the resilience of the village itself. A final bell, he whispered one morning, his fingers aching as he traced the top edge of the wooden block. A bell that will outlast this plague, that will call us back to life. His mother, weary and pale, approached from the back room. "Thomas, you must rest," she whispered, pressing a damp cloth to his sister Eleanor's flushed forehead. The girl moaned softly under layers of blankets, shivering under the weight of sickness. "You can never finish the bell if you fall ill yourself." Her voice cracked. "Horace, your father, he wishes he could help." Thomas clenched his jaw against the ache in his limbs. The plague had taken their carpenter neighbor, old Margaret Wilds, and just yesterday the frail baker's wife. Soon all the townsfolk would be gone, and Ashbrook would be nothing but a silent ghost. But the bell was still there, empty, hollow, yearning to be cast, to give voice to the dead and hope to the living. One afternoon, Thomas ventured into the street to find what he needed for the bell's casting. He ducked under the low archway where the blacksmith would usually work, the bright glow of forge fires now extinguished and cold. The villagers who remained moved like shadows along the road, their faces sallow and eyes hollow. Children were nowhere to be seen. They had either fled or succumbed. The marketplace was abandoned except for a lone vendor stacking rotting apples. Thomas's hands trembled as he gathered shards of birch wood for the mold, and fragments of copper discarded from his father's past works. He knew the formula for the bell's bronze, tin and copper melted together, their harmony in metal able to produce tones that could tremble in hearts and echo through centuries. But he had no proper mold yet. As dusk fell, Thomas sat beside the half-finished wooden mold, chisel in hand. The shape was a cone, ornamented with carvings of intertwined vines and leaves, inspired by the ash tree that stood sentry outside the village church. one of the few living things that had not withered yet. Carving the design was not just an artistic choice but a symbol of enduring life amid decay. "Please," he whispered, "please hold on." The nights were cold, and the wind howled around the edges of the workshop like mournful spirits. Rest was scarce. The dreams of cleanliness and sunlight were replaced by the scratch of rattling breaths, the dull thuds of cartwheels hauling bodies outside the village on draped canvas. Thomas's mother cared for Eleanor, but each day the girl grew weaker. Horace was still feverish, barely responsive. The bell must be made. One evening, as Thomas returned from foraging the edges of the village, he glimpsed through the fog a figure crouched near the well. It was old Father Merrick, the village priest, wrapped in a threadbare cloak. His voice faltered when he spoke. "We cannot let Ashbrook vanish into darkness without a voice, if not the bells ringing now, then a memory to remind those who come after." Thomas nodded. Merrick's counsel was a bittersweet comfort. The priest told tales of bellmakers in the old country, who forged bells so precious their sound would protect towns from evil spirits and disease. "Your father's craft," Merrick said softly, "can speak beyond the grave." Thomas's resolve hardened like the furnace fire. The bell could not wait for more help. It must be done now. As the days grew colder, the plague tightened its grip. The churchyard grew crowded with hastily dug graves. Thomas's mother sank into despair but flickered with a brief spark of hope whenever she saw her son laboring by firelight. One afternoon, amidst the quiet roar of the forge, Thomas realized he could not forge the bell alone. The molten bronze was fierce and unforgiving. The walls of the furnace seemed to sweat heat that could blister the skin. Yet the village had forsaken its people, only Thomas remained willing. He thought of the stories his father told. The bell must cry out with a voice pure and true, a sound that echoes the souls of the living and the dead alike. He labored tirelessly over the wooden mold until it was perfect, then coated it carefully with a mixture of clay and charcoal to withstand the molten metal. The wood was his canvas, the bronze his brush. On the eve of the casting, Thomas crept outside with Father Merrick, who brought a small bowl of holy water and blessed the mold and the furnace. Together they whispered prayers for hope, not just for themselves but for all those lost. The bellmaker's workshop burned bright through the night as Thomas poured molten bronze into the mold. The metal hissed and steam rose like ghostly tendrils, wrapping the village in a shroud of eerie light. When the fire finally died down and the bell cooled under a blanket of ashes, Thomas looked upon his creation, a small but mighty bell, no bigger than a large pot, yet etched with the intricate vine patterns and the face of a lone raven carved into its side. The raven was a symbol of both death and rebirth, a guardian between worlds. The next day, he dragged the bell to the church tower where the great bell had once called the faithful. It was difficult with his swollen hands, but he managed to place it on an iron hook beneath the old beam. With the entire village too weak or unwilling to gather, Thomas rang the small bell alone. The sound was gentle yet clear, a pure note that hung in the cold air and seemed to pulse with the heartbeat of Ashbrook itself. That sound stirred something in the villagers who remained. Faces appeared cautiously at windows. Lips moved silently in prayer or remembrance. The bell's voice carried their grief, their hope, and their undying connection. In the days that followed, the plague waned. The sun began to shine again, warming the frozen earth. Though much had been lost, the village was witness to a new beginning. Thomas's mother and sister slowly recovered. Horace, though frail, opened his eyes to see the bell, and pride warmed his fading heart. The bell was not large, nor resounding like his father's, but its significance transcended its size. It was a memorial wrought from love, sorrow, and courage. It was a voice that refused to be silenced. Years later, travelers passing through Ashbrook would hear the soft, sonorous call of the little raven bell ringing from the tower, and know this was a place where life had overcome death. And so the sound of hope endured, carried on by the hands of a boy who refused to let his village disappear into shadow. For more stories, like and subscribe.